All right, we can start.
Intro.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Good evening to the Facebook. Thank you, all of you who have signed up for this webinar, for all the people that are here, or all of the one person that's here. This is
John's joined us too.
what?
John's here. John Carroll's here.
Okay. Well, anyway, this is our live version of SoundNotes. Mike Cottmeyer is here. We're going to try to answer some questions. Mike, how are you tonight?
Awesome, Dave. How you doing, man?
I'm good, and I'm Dave Pryor. So we're going to try to deal with some questions that folks have sent in, and we're going to see where that goes. Mike, what's going on with you? Like, what's the top of mind for you tonight?
What's top of mind for me? Well, you know, it's like have an interesting week. I'm actually at home all week, as you guys can tell. From
The armada of guitars.
Yeah, what did we count last time? 30 of them, something like that.
Yes.
I have a bit of a problem collecting guitars, so it's kind of my thing. No, so it's good, right? So we're doing a lot of stuff. You know, whenever I get a chance to be home, you know, I'm doing a lot of stuff with the company. Last week I was down at University of Florida, where I do the entrepreneur in residence stuff, volunteering. And, you know, this is probably not the topic of conversation tonight, but one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about is I work with the Industrial and Systems Engineering College down there. And what's kind of cool is that we're exploring the intersection between industrial and systems engineering, the computer science department, and how it relates to organizational design.
Okay.
And I have kind of a hypothesis that is that the discipline and skills that industrial engineers bring to manufacturing, that's really what the core thing that we do at Leading Agile, and what the core thing I think the software industry needs, right? It's really an industrial and systems engineering problem more than it is a technology problem or a project management problem. And so Leading Agile is sponsoring a little bit of research down there to see if we can come up with some sort of position paper or some sort of introductory research into that topic.
So can you explain how, like, what are the key differences there?
Well, so if you think about it, right? So when you engage with that college, right? I'm actually a computer science guy by education, but when you engage with that college, what they're really teaching people how to do is to, you know, understand value streams, to optimize processes, to focus on flow. You know, a lot of the things that we're doing at the program and portfolio level, a lot of things that an Agile PMO would do.
Okay.
It's really kind of a systems engineering optimization process at the end of the day. But one of the things that we talk a lot about is there's really kind of three things when it comes to industrial and systems engineering and Agile that we have to think about, because, you know, industrial and systems engineers write code to develop algorithms to optimize their work, even in manufacturing. And so when we talk about this, one of the first things that we usually hear about is the idea of using Agile in that context to write software. And that's actually a valid need, but that's no different than any other software. Right? And then there's the idea of using industrial and systems engineering techniques to optimize process flows within healthy organizations.
Okay.
There's what I think about is the idea of, you know, imagine you walked into a manufacturing facility that was just wholly sub-optimized.
Okay.
And you're walking in and you're rebuilding the assembly line to even create some semblance of flow. That's a little bit of what we're doing in transformation. And one of the things I was making a point to the systems engineers, the students last week, was that, you know, software engineering is a manufacturing process of sorts. The analogy holds, but what's hard about it, what's difficult, is that all we see are people typing at computers and cube farms,
right?
You know, maybe whiteboards and things like that. You walk into an automotive manufacturing plant and you can see a physical product moving through a physical assembly line. With software, you can't see the product, right? It's all code, right? But that assembly line is there. It's just virtual.
So it seems weird to me that manufacturing is looking to Agile, since everything we do in Agile is based on stuff that happened in manufacturing.
Well, I don't know that they're necessarily they're necessarily looking to Agile. What I'm doing is I'm basically, you know, again, right? I think we're really totally derailed off of, you know, some of the questions that we were going to ask.
Whoa, no, I'm working my thing. It's coming around, man. Let it go.
So the application of that academic discipline, to software organizations.
Okay.
So it's not so much that manufacturing people are interested in Agile. It's more that, like, I believe that Agile, the fundamental science and academia underneath our topic, is an industrial engineering topic. Like, when you go in and if you talk about the kinds of things that we do,
right,
and you go talk about, I mean, you even start using the same words. And where the words are different, they map really easily. So again, right? So, but because the industrial and systems engineering department is mostly focused on manufacturing and physical processes,
Sure.
There's not an immediate jump to how do we apply this to software engineering. And we did we had an intern last summer that did some preliminary research, and we couldn't find anything in academia that addressed it. So
okay,
like that, yeah.
All right, so you ready for me to wind it back around then?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Okay, so a few minutes ago, you mentioned an Agile PMO, and I had a bunch of questions from students in class today about PMO. So
I did that on purpose too.
I know it was a nice little biscuit you laid there on the trail. So how would you define an Agile PMO, and how is that different from a traditional PMO for folks? Because there's all these PMOs that are like a dead man walking now, and they're trying to figure out what the hell they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
How is an Agile PMO different?
Well, so the first question that I have to ask, and I apologize, my seat is caught. I'll have to fix. I'm like too OCD to leave it there. Apologize. Sorry, everybody on the phone.
Sorry, MySpace.
Yeah, sorry. So the first thing you have to ask yourself, is the PMO a governance PMO, or is it a project management PMO? Because you see it both ways. You see a lighter weight PMO that's responsible for documentation and process definition and clearance and kind of like a compliance or governance kind of role.
Okay.
You also see PMOs that are full of project managers, and they're actually big, robust organizations that actually go out and do delivery.
Okay.
And so when you say, how does an Agile PMO work? Again, it's like one of the things you and I talked about as we were getting into some of these questions is that so often you have to go back to first principles to fundamentally answer it. But let me see if I can try to give you a simple answer. Like, to me, what an Agile PMO does is it manages the flow of value across multiple Agile teams, right? Especially if it's a governance perspective. So if you think about, and I'll just anchor on SAFe, because probably most people have some idea of what's involved with Scout Agile Framework. If you really think about what's going on at the program and portfolio levels, right, those are more lean, value stream based processes. Yeah. So people are getting together on some sort of regular cadence. They're moving work into a ready state. They're batching it up. They're putting it into delivery. They're inspecting, making sure it's the right thing. They're deploying, right? All that kind of stuff. That's a value stream that rides across multiple teams. Okay. So an Agile PMO, what I would suggest is that they're responsible for governing the flow of value across multiple Agile teams. So in a very practical sense, right, they might participate in a cross-functional team of, maybe product people, architects. They might be facilitating some decomposition work. They might be working with the product owners to make sure that work is sequenced across the teams the right way. They might be assessing the performance of those teams for, are they bottlenecked? Are the deliverables all kind of rolling up?
They're helping them with efficiency, basically.
Yeah, they become kind of the stewards of all of the processes that run outside of a single Agile team. Okay. Right? Because if you look at our model stuff, we have a really explicit recommendation for a program level governance flow, right? Based on Kanban, kind of roughly goes like analysis, design, build, test, deploy, because that's kind of where that happens, right? That flow, that decomposition happens across the teams, and it can be modeled in a Kanban. The steps and the handoffs, if necessary, can be orchestrated. And then the program level, there's often a flow that goes from ideation all the way to delivery and value realization, right? That can be mapped out. Oftentimes there's deliverables and things like that have to happen for those work items to flow across the portfolio level. Yep. So like a pure play like PMO, where it's really focused on governance and process adherence and things like that, would have a similar kind of role, but it would be exclusively at like the program and portfolio level, making sure that work is flowing through the system, that we're understanding where bottlenecks are, and we're optimizing, to your point, kind of the metrics around work flowing through the system.
Okay. Right? So can I ask a question about this? Yeah. Because I've had this kind of theory that for PMOs, one of the roles they can play in an organization that's transforming is they're like a shock absorber, a cultural shock absorber. So they're figuring out where the pain points are in the organization when you introduce Agile. They're helping management cope with the change to their value system and how they look at work. They're helping the teams cope with that change. Is there room in what you described, which is sort of very analytical of the flow, to be kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, like the company's therapist for agile transformation? Because the change carries a burden, a cognitive burden for the people, a cultural burden for the company, and somebody's got to help them cope with that. And that's one of the things I would think a PMO could add a lot of value in if they took on that mission. But that sounds like it doesn't necessarily sync up with what you're talking about.
So, right. So remember, right, how we think about things, there's three aspects of transformation. There's kind of the structural aspect of transformation, which is around how are we going to form teams, how are we going to create PMOs, how are we going to create governance bodies, things like that, right? How is the work of the system going to operate? What is the alignment of value creation? And then there's the processes that we use to enable that value creation, right? So at the team level, it's Scrum. At the program and portfolio level, it's more often than not Kanban, right? There's metrics and tooling strategies at those levels, right? Things like that, right? So that's structural, process focused. Yeah. And then kind of the third leg of it is cultural and behavioral, right? That kind of a thing. So, I don't know, man. It's like,
do you think that that's necessary? Do you think that or I mean, maybe it's like an organizational change PMO or a transformation PMO. Is that function needed?
Well, so what you basically described to me is somebody playing a coaching role, is somebody playing a support role in the organization, right?
Yes.
And so if we translate your question into, does an Agile PMO provide a coaching role, a support role for the organization to help steward change?
Yeah.
Again, right, that's just the decision that you make. So I mean, a lot of times we come in as an external entity and we're providing the change agent and the coaching role to help the organization instantiate multi-tier governance, right? A team-based organizational structure to get the flow of value through. So in a steady operational state, I would suggest that the PMO owns how the program and portfolio layers are governed and how the flow of value goes through there. And then at a team level execution, making sure that the teams have everything. They're working with Scrum Masters and product owners to make sure that those teams have everything that they need in order to stabilize velocity. I think the PMO is probably also interfacing with other parts of the organization that need analytics or data or what have you, or maybe there's coordination with the delivery of the product organization to like maybe marketing or sales or something like that, right? Yeah. So that's like to me, that's the core piece. So if the organization is also, the PMO is also responsible, has a coaching or a change agent, that's probably different than maybe the management of the flow of value across the enterprise.
Okay.
That's how I think about it, right? And so I don't think it's uncommon for a PMO to have a coaching function part of it,
right?
But I just think it would require just a lot of intentionality, right? Because if you're doing those kinds of things, I mean, my point of view, right? So I don't know how Kathy, Greg, and Jen feel about this, how much they've been, kind of paying attention to our overall body of work. But, one of the things I think is a challenge, and this is the reason why it's hard to answer PMO questions without some time to really unpack it, is if you take a functionally siloed organization, or an organization that is not aligned around products or value or capability or something like that, then the PMO question becomes difficult, right? Because a healthy Agile PMO operates within an Agile ecosystem in an Agile context. It's a whole different question to say, I have a broken organization that's not aligned, that is trying to figure out how to do Agile. What's the role of the PMO in that?
Well, so there's all this focus on organizational change now, and that's becoming like it's a thing. And I keep wondering if there needs to be part of a company that's monitoring how they're coping with change, the pace of change. In the same way you manage flow through the system, you manage change through the organization.
So we're working on two engagements right now that I would consider uber engagements, right? Large, multi thousands of people transformations. And in both cases, we've instantiated an entity called a transformation office. And the transformation office is responsible for facilitating organizational design, facilitating alignment around governance and metrics, facilitating alignment around transformation strategy.
Okay.
Like that, right? And then in that kind of an organization, and pay attention, I'm sure you probably see it, but Jessica is texting us a question here if it's relevant.
I'm paying attention.
Okay, sorry about that. We're new at this, everybody. We're
damn, dude.
Yeah, sorry. But the challenge becomes is that in those organizations that are doing explicit transformation work,
right?
I think it's smart to separate the transformation office from the PMO, right? Complementary, they inform each other.
Yeah.
But the transformation office is separate. In a steady state organization, right, one that's been transformed, you can talk about the idealized way that in a multi-tier agile implementation with execution at the team level, program portfolio level, flow of value based in Kanban, right? Then you can talk about the PMO's role in facilitating that flow of value, removing impediments, coordinating external entities, right? Things like that.
Okay.
Where it gets complicated, and but this is where I think the questions come from, is I'm in a traditional PMO, working with an organization that's trying to do Agile, but probably not really doing it incredibly well. What's my new job in that?
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the follow-up questions to that was, is there a role for a project manager of some kind in that organization?
Yeah, I think absolutely in a well-formed Agile enterprise. That what I used to say about this all the time back when I was really exploring this in depth is that Scrum didn't do away with project management per se, but it did do away with project managers, right? No, it did, right?
I know.
So I actually wrote a blog post. This has to have been 7, 8, 9 years ago now. It's like kind of like what happened to the project manager. And if you really look at the role of the product owner, the Scrum master, and the team, I would suggest that the lion's share of the project manager's core function went to the product owner.
Yeah.
Some of the facilitation and softer stuff, meetings, process, and metric stuff went to Scrum Master. But a lot of the decisions about what to do and how to do the work and how to break things down went to the team.
Right.
So, a lot of times we think, okay, because it says product owner in it, we're going to give the role to a project manager or a BA. And, again, right, in the early days when I was exploring this, I was working for a company called CheckFree, and they had this role. It was like an implementation project manager. And what this project manager would do is they would interface with the external customers to establish the requirements. And then they would work with the team to put together a plan. And this is all waterfall, right? So it's Gantt charts and things like that, to actually execute the work, right? And then they would manage the team to do the work. And I was thinking, right, you go, okay, well, that's kind of like the role of a product owner, right? Go out to the market, figure out what the market needs, and then break things down into user stories and make sequencing decisions about how to feed it to the team.
Sure.
And so in my head, as I was parsing all this stuff in my early days, I was like, I think the product owner actually has a large part of the project manager's job. Mm-hmm. What the product owner doesn't have, either the Scrum Master or the team has. So now you get into these large multi-team, multi-program, multi-portfolio kinds of environments. And what I would suggest is that at the lowest level, that rule still holds, that the teams are largely going to operate within their container. They're going to be self-organized and self-managed within that container. They're going to receive backlog for the product owner. They're going to produce working tested software at the end of the sprint. They're going to establish stable velocity. And within that set of constraints, they get to operate kind of however they want, right? They get to self-organize the work within that container. And so in that context, right, a healthy performing Scrum team, then I don't need a project manager at the team level.
Right.
What I tend to need a project manager is in the coordination of the flow of value across, right? Okay. So in our product owner team model, we would take a project manager, a product person, and like an architect, and maybe a QA analyst or another kind of analyst. And then they would be responsible for, collectively for decomposition and managing the flow of work across teams.
Okay.
The project manager would perform a unique role in understanding the metrics at the execution level, understanding what's necessary to maintain value flowing at the program level, and then interfacing with the rest of the organization to get it what it needs and to get the program what it needs, right? Okay. So that project manager, I think, takes a step up and does the stuff that's what's really meaningful.
Okay.
But everything I just said is predicated upon having well-formed teams that can stabilize velocity.
Okay.
Here's the anti-pattern that.
Well, yeah, and I got to follow up when you're done with your anti-pattern.
Yeah, so here's the anti-pattern that creates the cognitive dissonance. If the team does not have stable velocity against a known backlog, then what happens is that team's not predictable, right? It can't make commitments. And now because it can't make any commitments and it's got dependencies on 5 or 6 other teams, right? The tendency is for the project manager that's supposed to be living in the layer above,
right,
to go down and say, well, okay, right, you don't have stable velocity, you can't make any commitments. How many hours are you going to work? What tasks are you going to work on? What's going to be in your Gantt chart, right? And they start managing it, right? Well, so how the team, I'm going to say this in a provocative way, how the team protects themselves from the project manager is that they operate as a self-contained unit and establish stable velocity against a known backlog, and they can start to articulate 3, 6, sometimes 8 sprints out where they think they're going to be.
Okay.
Give that project manager a baseline. Like my early experience, and this
is like total heresy. You weaving the PM speak into your Agile here.
Well, it's because I grew up in project management, right? And so, and there's a trade-off. It's like if the teams want to be self-managed on some agreed upon planning horizon, they have to be able to make and meet commitments.
Okay.
And one of the things I do in my 3 things talk is I talk about like the holy grail of Agile isn't Scrum Masters and product owners and teams and burn down charts and daily stand-ups and all this stuff, right? It's, do I have a well-formed team, a complete team, 6 to 8 people that can deliver a unit off of the backlog that is developed by a product owner or somebody, right? And if I know the size of my backlog and I know the velocity of the team, I can start to anticipate how long it's going to take me to get through any body of work.
Yeah.
And what I tell people all the time, and there's a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance here because we've heard the messages in the Agile community for so long that the team's just going to show up, just do the best they can and whatever. Well, even in the best of circumstances, right, you're playing with somebody else's money, right? You've got to have some mechanism for being able to make any commitments on some planning horizon. Okay. And if I don't know the size of my backlog and I don't know the throughput of the team, the velocity of the team, and I can't get to the definition of done at the end of a sprint, then what I would suggest is that your done is indeterminate, right? You have no idea how far you're going to get from the backlog, through the backlog. And if that's okay in your domain, okay, fine. But if your domain is such that you've got to get these 8 teams to all land in the same place at the same time, then that's going to be insufficient, right? And that pressure from the top, the project management PMO is going to be like, look, we're on the hook for delivering this stuff. You Agile teams down here who can't stabilize your velocity, you don't know the size of your backlog, you can't get to a definition of done, you guys are now an unreliable partner for us, and we can't make commitments on your behalf.
Okay.
And so what that does is that those people are on the hook, so they put pressure down and they begin to break the rules of Scrum. And so in the early days, when I was going in and doing a lot of hands-on coaching rather than organization building that I'm doing now, I would go to the teams and I'd say, look, you guys have to stabilize velocity. And they go, we're never going to be able to follow these rules because the organization is going to just interrupt us like crazy, right? We're never going to be able to operate off of a known backlog. Right. And I say, here's the deal, right? Here's the trade-off. If you can stabilize velocity, right, then we have to go to the rest of the organization and we have to rationalize the demand patterns, right? So
what do you mean by demand? What do you mean by demand patterns?
Yeah, so demand is basically backlog, or in a more complex, the kind of the relationship between user stories, features, and epics, right? The flow of work, right? Because what teams are experiencing is that they're getting demand from lots of different channels, multiple products, multiple projects. They're interrupt driven. They're dealing with the executives, interrupting them. They've got their big projects and programs they're trying to deliver. The way Agile works, right, is a complete cross-functional team operating off of a stable backlog, a known backlog, that can produce a working test increment to an acceptance criteria at the end of the sprint, right? And then they get at least 2 weeks, or back in the day, 4 weeks to work uninterrupted. Okay. Well, the demand engine, right, the program portfolio, all the work intake systems are violating that principle. Yeah. Okay. And, and I think to some degree, Scrum was so emphatic about the single wringable neck because the way I look at the product owner, it was set up as like a buffer, like an interface to the team. Like
Yeah.
you can't
The translation layer between the business and the team.
You leave the team alone, the product owner will take the heat. They'll rationalize the demand patterns, right? The team gets a clean backlog. Okay. But again, if you don't understand how that pattern's supposed to work, right, that all starts to break down.
So,
and then you get, yeah, please.
All right. So I was at a conference a few weeks ago in Memphis, and it was digital PM. So it's all about digital agencies, web design shops, stuff like that. They're all client driven, and the clients used to just snap on their fingers and they just jump.
Yeah.
And their business model is set up so that the only way they can maintain the funding coming in is if everybody's on like 17 projects and they're all on 7 different teams, and they just switch from one thing to another. And was advocating, let me say it that way, advocating for just at least get a stable team, get a stable cross-functional team that can deliver something.
Yeah.
If that's the best you can do, like, because they're all worried about trying to do Agile, and I don't know why they're trying to do Agile, but if you can at least get a stable team, if the whole rest of the organization is not fit for Agile yet or not structured in such a way, you're talking about organizational design. Is that enough to get started? I mean, does it matter if they're Agile?
So I would suspect, given your background, your biases, what you do for a living, that we might be equating Agile to Scrum.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not advocating for. I'm advocating for not Scrum for these agents.
Let's assume the questioner is, because
they all think they're supposed to do Scrum.
Right? Yeah. So if you show up for a daily stand-up meeting, if you do a regular cadence of plan, if you deliver something at the end of a sprint, you could do. I think this would be a perfect case where you could do perfect Scrum, but fail to actually deliver agility.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple of issues that are underneath. We deal with this in our marketing team, right, as well. So the idea of a Scrum team is that they're basically a self-organizing team of specializing generalists, T-shaped, right? They do one thing great. They do lots of things kind of well. What you find in marketing groups is that I think the skill sets are way, way more specialized.
Yeah.
So like a copywriter is not necessarily going to be the least bit competent at doing web design.
Yeah.
And the web designers and the copywriters might not be worth anything if they're doing SEO. They're probably not graphic artists at all, right? But you need all of those elements to come together in order to be able to produce something of value for that client. Okay.
Yep.
So the layering of this problem is really interesting, right? So just applying Scrum to that, I don't think is largely going to work, right?
Okay.
So there's probably some organizational design, right? There's probably some elements that you could make a cross-functional team. And I'm actually literally meeting with Tim Zach, our marketing guy, to talk about scaling our marketing department tomorrow. And that is going to be the focus of the conversation. Like, what units could we make that would operate like pods and be cross-functional teams and operate together?
Yeah.
And which things would be like services to those teams, right?
Okay.
So might make sense to have a team of like a graphic designer, a copywriter, and a strategist.
Yeah.
At our level of scale, right, we're relatively small from a marketing department. I might centralize web design, videography, and I don't know, SEO.
Okay.
Like that, right? And then what I would do is I would have like a primary delivery team responsible for that client's backlog that is operating as a team, and then as necessary injecting work into the Kanban of the videography team, the graphic design team, not graphic design, the web design team, and the SEO team, right? Something like that. But then those teams would have to be operating because they're taking work from multiple stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right? So they would have to be able to communicate back to their teams where their work request is at in the queue. They would have to understand class of service and what was urgent and what wasn't. They'd have to have metrics about when that work item is expected to be done.
Right.
So that team could count on that deliverable, assuming prioritization holds, that team could count on that deliverable when it was ready. Okay. So even in that kind of a system, there is an aspect of system design. There's probably parts of it that are fine for cross-functional that can do Scrum, but then the relationship between that and the specialist teams, right? Those interactions have to be governed.
Okay.
Right? The second piece of your problem that makes this complicated is that the demand patterns on...
Like it wasn't complicated already.
Right, exactly. Right? Deal with so in these things, these are not like simple answers.
Yeah.
Right. So then the other side of the problem you have is that even that client team is probably not working with a single client.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They're dealing with multiple input channels.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the reality is that all of those organizations are more than likely overcommitted because
they have to be.
They say yes to all the work, right?
They have to, yeah.
Services organization, right? So you have too much work in the pipe, right? You got 10 pounds going through a 5-pound bag,
jammed up, yeah.
Right.
It's like South Carolina in the flood right
now. So the reality is, right? So the fact that we're overcommitted destabilizes our ability to make and meet commitments.
Yeah.
Because more to do than the team can actually do. And because the team is thrashing and dealing with the things that are of the highest priority, right? That's destabilizing the shared services queues as well, right?
Because but they can say they're agile because they're doing Scrum and Kanban.
Okay, man. So I'm not answering red herring questions tonight. So
no. I'm gonna come. There's a reason I'm saying.
Well, so no, it's all good, right? So yeah, but so the interesting thing is, right? So there is an element of structure, right? What does that look like? There's an element of governance, and the root of that problem, right? Once you get the structure right, once you get the processes right, what you get is demand pattern management, right? Okay. And that's the thing that's complicated. And so you either have one of two choices. You either say, we're going to create a process that is going to be chaotic, but we're going to manage it visually. And we're going to make intentional decisions and intentional trade-offs about how to orchestrate the work to maximize customer value. Okay. And by that, I mean, whoever's screaming the loudest, whoever's threatening to remove their account, whoever has the highest value thing at any given moment. Yeah. We are going to create a totally responsive system, and it's going to be totally visual. We're going to know everywhere everything's at, and that is how we're going to work.
It sounds super dysfunctional.
That is it's a perfectly valid way to work.
Yeah.
But don't expect to make and meet commitments.
Okay.
Because you're not going to be able to reliably deliver for that customer.
Okay. So here's where I want to wind back to the thing. So I am wondering if there's certain types of organizations where Scrum can work. There's certain ones where Kanban can work. Do you think that there is a class of organization out there that Agile has failed to come up with a valid way to meet what they need? Like maybe these digital or whatever service organizations, what we have on the table for them now, they're looking at the menu and there's nothing that they want to eat because it's going to be this, we're just totally responsive. We just answer whoever yells. I mean, that sounds awful.
Well, so here's my take, right? And so, I think last session we talked about the idea of reference architecture versus reference implementation, patterns versus prescriptions, right? Things like that. And so what I think is that some of these new domains, I mean, we've been pretty fortunate. We've gotten to do some work like for fast food restaurants. We've gotten to do some work for hotel chains. Mm-hmm. Talking with one potential client right now about some hardware stuff, some really non-software kinds of things. And what we find is that in every single one of these applications, it requires custom org design, custom governance, and custom practices and things that enable that governance, right? Okay. So is there a place where Agile doesn't work? Now, if I answer that question, I think about it from the other side. Given the rate of change in most organizations and in most markets, is there a place where we have the luxury of big upfront planning, creating a Gantt chart, orchestrating, trying to identify enough of the requirements and enough of how to do the work that we can get good estimates, and then put that on a Gantt chart and deliver it? I think the hypothesis has failed. I don't think we can know enough about the requirements. And I think if we try, we're going to slow down the process and we're going to get it wrong and things are going to change and we're going to deliver the thing on time, but we're not going to deliver the right thing. Okay. So I don't think we can know enough about the requirements. I don't think we can know enough about how long it's going to take to do the work. Once we apply actual human beings to that estimate, there's tremendous volatility in how human beings operate day to day. Right. And so we basically have time, cost, and scope that we can't stabilize out. Okay. And so I don't think while Scrum or SAFe or less might need to be the answer, I also don't believe there is a universe where waterfall is the answer. I think there's no organization where I would say big upfront planning, large batches, and trying to predict the future kinds of things is the right strategy. I would never advocate for that. But if you look at like our model, like the lower left quadrant, what we're advocating for are stable teams,
right?
Usually using Scrum, could use Kanban. Kanban-based program management that's orchestrating dependencies and managing the flow of work to organizational priorities, right? Subordinate to a portfolio layer. The portfolio layer might be doing 6 to 9 to 12-month planning. The program layer is probably doing 3 to 6 month look ahead. The backlogs are being executed at the team level. Probably for digital marketing, that all gets compressed, right? And it's probably like narrower time horizons because there's more volatility.
Yeah.
So I for an organization that can't go to like lean startup or hyper expressive agile, what I might say is team-based, iterative and incremental delivery, governed in a way that it's feeding small batches through the system so we can get more continuous delivery and more continuous feedback. And we create optionality for change when we learn new things.
Okay.
And so when I talk like that, people will come up to me and go, well, that sounds like waterfall. And the reason why they say that is because the agile that they want to do is just leave me alone and let me code. And there's almost no professional environment where you can say, leave me alone and let me code, and I'll just get done. And that's a non-starter in most organizations. So if you're saying that agile is leaving in the corner and let me just do the best I can as long as I can until you run out of money and then you get what you get, right? That's a non-starter. But if we can allow agile to be breaking things into smaller batches, releasing things into production more frequently, the ability to get feedback from customers, the ability to create optionality for change, things like that, then if that can be agile, right? If that's agile too, right? Even if I'm doing more forward planning than I might like, even if I think that forward planning is waste, right? It kind of creates safety and kind of creates a bubble for our stakeholders.
Okay.
Right? They want to pay that waste, right? To create that kind of safety.
Sure.
Right? And so we just have to be just ultimately pragmatic about this stuff.
Okay.
Right. And so is agile the right thing for everybody? It depends on what you mean by agile.
Well, and I was it seems like the definition of what it is might be shifting a little bit. I mean, you've got all the people saying it's gone bad because we're not sticking to the core of it, but then
what is the core, right?
Depends who you ask.
Responding to change over following a plan, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, people over tools. And what's the one I'm leaving out?
Dude, you were so close.
Yeah, I know, right?
I was like, wow, look at that. He's got it all memorized.
I was actually going up the list backwards, right? So basically people and interactions over processes and tools.
Individuals and interaction over processes and tools.
Collaboration over contract negotiation.
That's the third one. Responding to change over following a plan is 4. What's number 2, Mike?
Leaving out the second one. Somebody's got to type it in. Kathy, Greg, Mark. We've got the agile experts on the phone, and we can't remember. What am I losing?
Working software.
Over comprehensive documentation.
There you go.
Yeah.
I knew it.
So there you go. Well, yeah. So the idea, right? So if you look at that, right, and you say, lower left quadrant, leading agile, team-based, iterative and incremental delivery, right? Responding to change over following a plan? Yes, right? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation? Yes. Working software over comprehensive documentation? Absolutely, right? People and interactions over processes and tools? Absolutely, right? So why can't I call that agile too? I mean, if you think about it, right, some of the earliest methodologies were things like feature-driven development, dynamic development methodology, Jim Highsmith's, I think he called it adaptive project management or something like that. I go back like the first Agile book I read by Sanjeev Augustine from Lightspeed. Like that was all Agile project management.
Don't tell people that. Sanjeev's head just went.
No, I know. I've told Sanjeev that too, right? That's really kind of funny. He was actually the first Agile speaker I ever heard speak, and he was the first Agile book I ever read.
Wow. All right. Yeah. I want to change topics. I want to ask you a question that I think you're not going to want to answer.
Oh, gosh. Okay. What do we got?
It came from the audience, though.
Okay, cool. Well, then I'll answer it. Then I want to answer the question.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Thoughts on the use of free or open source Agile tools, the goods, the bads, and some recommendations for starting out with small teams.
Well, so, okay, so I'll be perfectly candid, my attitude towards tools, right? So I don't know any of the open source tools, right? We don't use them, right? We don't encounter them in the wild.
Okay.
I would have told you for a long, long time, full disclosure, I came out of version 1. That's what I was doing before I started leading Agile. And so I have an affinity for that tool, and I have an affinity for the people that work there, right? It's changed with CollabNet a little bit, but they're still all good people over there. And so for the kinds of scale that we do, what I've found is that, version 1, the CA rally stuff, Agile Craft now, those were kind of always my 3 favorites because they really dealt with scale really well, right? Because almost anything that we're going into, we've got multi-tier kinds of things. Right. Where the entrants that are kind of changing and evolving that we've had some success with is we've been able to build templates to make TFS work. And that one's no, seriously, right? Yeah. But it's like Derek did a bunch of that stuff for us back in the day. And the thing is a lot of times people buy the Microsoft suite of stuff, right? And then they basically have TFS.
Yeah, they're stuck with it.
So it's basically kind of free, right? And then, one of the things that's interesting is I'm on record. I'm not like a huge Jira fan. I'm still not a huge Jira fan. But the thing with Jira is that the barrier to entry is so low, and it's ubiquitous within
people love it.
And they love it, right?
Yeah.
But the challenge with Jira, right, and they're getting more mature about being able to do the roll-up views, like Jira Portfolio is going up, and it's becoming kind of a real thing. And we've got a lot of people, we've got a lot of experts in leading Agile that know how to do it. And I'm a little biased against it, but I've kind of like gotten over it. And to the extent that we can make it work, then we make it work, right? And a lot of our customers like it.
Okay.
So like when I've looked at things like, and this is old, right? So like when I've looked at things like Mingle, or I've looked at things like, I'm trying to think of like the one that like Pivotal Labs, maybe it was just Pivotal Tracker. That was it. I've looked at some of the other like smaller things. Target Process was one of them. Yeah. And I don't really know how those tools have evolved over the last 5 or 6 years. But what I've always found is that they were great for teams, but it's really the roll up that is the interesting thing. And so it would blow me away if there was a credible open source solution that did the roll up stuff well.
Okay. Right? So you don't advocate for Post-its and Sharpies anymore because that won't operate at a program.
Well, so I use Post-its and Sharpies all the time. We use Post-its and Sharpies on the largest of the large clients. And I'll fully credit this. Back when I was at version 1, version 1 used Sharpies and sticky notes on the board all the time. Okay. And so what we would talk about though is we would talk about collaborate on the walls and then track on the tools. And so it's so like a lot of times like what we'll do is we'll use physical stickies on a board. We've used a tool called NoteApp for a while, which is like a virtual sticky note board. We use it for a lot of our retrospectives here at Leading Agile because we're a distributed company. And those are great tools for brainstorming and gathering data and making decisions and things like that. But they're not always the best tools for distributed teams, working in concert with a bunch of other stuff, right? Okay. So if you've got a small team, right? If you're a startup and you're all co-located and you're all working together in an office somewhere,
on the wall,
by all means do it on the wall, right? There's just no need for tooling and tooling overhead and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're doing any kind of distributed work or you're doing any kind of multi-team work, then it's almost always a hybrid of collaborate and plan as close to the work surface as you can, but then track and manage work and do all your reporting out of the tool. And that means that you probably need an intern or somebody to take the stuff off the wall and put it in the tool. But people do different kinds of things, right? So I'm not dogmatic about it at all. I just think we have to be pragmatic about what works in different contexts.
So I want to share something that Marty, Bradley, and I were talking about. Well, actually, the podcast we haven't released yet with Greg and Jessica and Marty, and we were talking about one of our clients. And when the reporting goes in, or when the tools go in, you're going to generate reports.
Okay.
And that when you start to bring the reports to senior management, you've got to kind of teach them what these reports mean, how they're different.
Absolutely.
Once they get used to that transparency, they really like it. But we were talking about the fact that you've got to keep upping that game. It's like they get this sort of like addiction, and you've got to like get them here, and then we give them something a little stronger, and then we give them a little stronger. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is there like a ceiling to that? Is there a point where you're trying to get them to this level of visibility?
Well, so one of the things that we've gone to market with is a strategy, right? And I'm going to steal a line from Fred Smith, the CEO of FedEx, is that one of the things he says about FedEx is he goes, the data about the package is as important as the package. And what he's talking about is he's basically saying, and think about this, right? When you receive a FedEx package on your door, right, not only do you get the package as part of the product, but you are also getting email alerts along the way. If it's a day late, you know where it is, you know the last place it was scanned in. There's a pretty good shot if it's gotten lost that you can track it, right? All that kind of stuff. Right? So that's part of the overall service, right? So you're not just paying for the package to randomly show up at your door whenever it shows up. You're paying for all the information associated with that package getting to your house.
Very Marshall McLuhan.
Well, yeah, it's just right. That's what they do. Right. And so I just didn't get your reference. That's why
the medium is the message.
Okay, there you go. Okay, cool. So we've taken that pretty seriously at Leading Agile too, right? And so I would suggest that the data about the transformation, right, how it's progressing in a measurable way,
it's like FedEx tracking,
is as important as the transformation itself.
That's
right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah, because you think about it, right? As far as transformation work goes, there's the progress of the transformation itself.
Yeah.
And then there's the progress against the business levers that we're actually moving as a result of the transformation. And both of those things are relevant, and they're incredibly powerful, not only from us justifying our existence, but giving the executives ground cover as to, how they're justifying the money that they're spending on us for being there.
Okay.
Now extend that into the product space. Are the metrics about product delivery as important as, apologies, I should have turned that off.
You should have turned that off. So wait, before you go, I want to interrupt you. So we're getting all these questions about tools. So I think we're going to probably stay away from tools for the rest of this because we only have 13 minutes left, but I will try to schedule something with Jessica so we can do that in the future.
Yeah, maybe me and Jessica or somebody we can get on. We can get live one of these and just talk straight about tools. Because I got to keep Jessica's a Jira lover, right? So I got to keep Jessica on.
All right, back to your train of thought.
Jessica and I have a bit of a friendly thing back and forth with Jira, so it's all good. All the love in the world for Jira. It's just not what I grew up in. So anyway, so then you think about, right, is the information about the progress that we're making on the software project as important as the software project itself? And it might be hard to make the argument that it's as important because
I'd say it's more important.
Well, I'd say it's pretty darn important, right? I don't know whether it's more or close or.
Well, you're changing the organization. It's not just delivering product; it's teaching it how to be different.
So that gets to the transformation, right?
Yeah.
So beyond a shadow of a doubt, Leading Agile's mindset is that the data about the transformation is as important as the transformation.
Okay.
The economic drivers, the measurement of progress against transformation. Yeah. But now we're talking about a transformed organization, right? Leading Agile themselves, whatever. And then is being able to communicate progress against the deliverable important. And I would suggest that it absolutely is important.
Yeah.
You take that a lot of different angles, right? So if you're in a really high functioning Agile ecosystem, right? Well-formed teams, continuous integration, continuous delivery, DevOps, right? Everything that you can think to do, right? Well, the progress indicators that we care about might not be, how well are we doing actually delivering the software we promised, right? It might be, are we acquiring new customers? Are we driving up revenue? Are we driving up list? I would suggest that stuff matters.
Yeah. Is the impact there?
If we're not as mature, and let's say we're delivering once a quarter or once every 6 weeks or once a month, right? Then progress against the release becomes a leading indicator to know like how we're progressing against that feature set, because that feature set represents an investment hypothesis about how we might perform, right? So then we have two sets of data, right? We've got the progress towards the release, right? We have leading indicators of, is the release going to be successful? And then we have the actual metrics associated once we deploy the release. Okay.
Okay.
I would suggest that those indicators are pretty important as well.
Yeah.
Right. So when executives get good, reliable data that they can actually make decisions off of, right? Reliable decisions off of, that is kind of addictive, right?
Okay.
It's cool. This is a total aside, but we have some pretty good metrics about how leading Agile performs financially, right? So we have metrics about like who's where on what accounts. We have metrics around what contracts are signed, what revenue projections look like. We manage a tremendous amount of variation on any given day. And every account leader is responsible for making sure that their stuff is up to date in real time.
Yeah.
I can't manage the business if I don't know that kind of stuff, right? Because I'm constantly making bets around who to hire, and do we need to acquire more clients, and do we need to wind something down? Do we need to spend something up, right? And we're too big and too distributed. I can't run around and talk to everybody and go, okay, what do you think about this account? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Like, I got to know, right? I got to know what bet you're making, right? And it has to be pretty reliable over time. And so I think metrics, if they're used in a healthy way, and they actually measure things that are real, metrics are great.
Okay.
But the downside is when we use vanity metrics to beat people up. Right? Because it's not like metrics are bad, but metrics that don't measure what we really care about or that don't reflect reality, that's bad, because then we make
fake news
decisions. It's fake news.
Yeah. All right. I got a closing question, because we're getting to the top of the hour, and this is metrics related.
Okay.
This is from Michael. Can you recommend good Agile metrics for innovation level efforts?
So I don't know that I'm the guy to answer that question, right? So I've had these conversations. We have an emerging product practice, right? And so when I've had these conversations with the product guys that are on our team, I think a lot of the things that I naturally gravitate to are things that are maybe vanity metrics to those guys.
So can you give an example?
Well, so no, candidly, probably not, right? This isn't fine stuff for me. So I'm just being really candid, right? Because I'm not going to pretend to be an expert.
Sure.
I don't know, right? But the kinds of things that you're looking for, right, in an innovation space is, whatever matters to you. Are you acquiring customers? Are you creating disruptive technologies? Are you, the amount of experiments you run? Things like that. What's
your flow from ideation?
But that's really interesting, right? Because that's where I tend to go too, right? And this is the reason why I'm a little uncomfortable answering the question.
Okay.
Because when you're dealing with innovation or even disruptive innovation,
right,
you don't necessarily know what you're tracking towards. Okay. And so like where to me, like where my brain goes is, I'm going to do something innovative. So
look at me.
I'm going to create an innovation project with a defined scope, and and this is what my innovation is going to be. Right? And then so I start to go back to that default, and or I'll go to like, okay, well, we're going to innovate, so we're going to A/B test, we're going to create hypotheses, we're going to do these different things, right? Yeah. And then my brain goes to metrics and revenue and that kind of thing. And but if you're really measuring innovation, you might start measuring things like, and again, I don't know if these are the right things, but the number of experiments that you've run.
Which can also become a vanity metric too, though.
Well, like anything can become a vanity metric, right? So it's all contextual. So if we really want to go deep into this, like if we find ourselves, I think we owe the group another question too, by the way.
So Michael, the answer is to your question, it depends.
No, but I think there's some things to consider, right? So if this is something that we start getting a lot of questions on, like Scott Selhorst on our team, or like a John Harmer on our team, they have like a really deeply held point of view because they're the ones that are going in with some of our clients that are doing the more innovative things. Yeah. For us, this is really kind of like a Basecamp 5 problem to solve. Yeah. And that's really kind of at the end of the chain for us.
We're busy trying to get people to have that problem. That's the good problem to have.
Yeah, trying to get people to have that problem. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So sorry, Michael, I couldn't give you a cleaner answer to that.
I think that's a fair answer. And I can probably do something with Scott and those guys later on.
You're you're never going to get a bullshit answer from me that I don't know the answer.
Well, I want to point something out that just happened. So for the folks that are listening, I'm assuming you're working with Agile Team somewhere, you're coaching stuff or something like that. But to me, one of the signs of somebody who actually knows what the hell they're talking about is when they can legitimately look at the screen and say, I'm not the guy.
Not the guy.
Yeah. And that's an important thing.
We have the guy on our team. And that's a risk, right? That's a risk with me. And I'm going to have to probably get out and start doing some more hands-on coaching and stuff, because it's like what I've really developed a strong point of view around is the mechanisms of change and how to build an organization to lead these kinds of changes.
Yeah.
In information offices and things like that. You know, at this stage of the game, like I can go back to first principles and I can solve a ton of problems by reducing the problem down to its fundamentals and building back up the answer.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of stuff that if we want to do stuff on DevOps and technology things, we're going to have to get somebody else on the phone, right? If we're going to do stuff around like hardcore product stuff, then we got people to do that. It's just that's not my deep expertise. So
okay, what do you see? I have a question for you to close out with then. So you go around, you meet with all these different executives and stuff like that. Are there new questions that they're asking? Like, is their mindset shifting? Are they looking at different stuff? Their understanding of Agile evolving in some way that maybe other folks, people like me, don't get exposure to that?
I'll tell you the feedback that we're getting quite often is, and again, right, there's a huge risk that, you know, because the way that we market is, right, we cast a pretty wide net. We do a lot of stuff like this. We do stuff through social channels and speaking and things. And so the people that call us have been paying attention to our stuff and are somewhat disposed to think like we think. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're kind of filtering the market to find the people that have the problem that we solve, right? Yeah. So there's some risk that my data set is too narrow to answer the question generally. Okay. But what we find is that most of our clients, they're not trying to go from waterfall to Agile. They've usually tried some Agile, had some success, but have had failures that they can't explain.
Right.
Okay. And they're going to market and they're sending people to Scrum training or safe training or things like that. And it feels to them like there's more to the story.
Okay.
So, and I think the more to the story is all this change management stuff that we're talking around is the idea of, okay, I hear where you want to go, but like, how do we safely and pragmatically get there? And kind of the refrain we're hearing quite a lot is like, yeah, I could kind of tell that there seemed to be more to it, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And what you've done is helped us articulate it.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
Because I think our market is such that people really want to do this, but they're not going to just do things blindly for the sake of doing them on the promise that it might work, right? Especially if it doesn't make intuitive sense right out of the gate.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Ready for I have the fun, weird question now.
Okay, so we got 2 minutes left, man. Make it happen.
This is it. Okay. So you have 30-ish guitars behind you. You're stranded on an island. You're going to starve to death. You only get to take one.
You mean I'm going to starve to death and you make me bring a guitar?
Well, what else are you going to do? You're not going to eat.
You're looking for like one guitar with like.
I want to know which one of those. All right. So the room catches on fire. You only can get one guitar. Which is the one you're taking?
It's tough, man.
I know.
Probably most versatile guitar would probably be like a Gibson ES335 semi-hollow body.
Where is it? Show me.
It's actually right behind me. It's the one.
Show everyone the guitar, Mike. Go get the guitar.
It's the blonde one right there. So I've been playing it recently. There's a lot of really great guitars. I mean, the one I'm most emotionally connected to is a Gibson Flying V that I have. I'm kind of a Gibson guy. I've got an SG and I've got a Les Paul. I've got Jacksons I like. I've got a Parker that is really nice. I've got a couple Fender Stratocasters. I've got a couple of handmade guitars. So if Jacob Harper's listening to this, I'd probably just really deeply offended because I bought like 4 handmade guitars from him. Okay. Those would be candidates too, right? But those are more specialty guitars, right? So I tend to be a humbucker guy. I tend to be, you know, kind of a rock and roll blues guy. And I've got a couple guitars from him that are more Telecaster.
There you go. That's the guitar that you want there.
Yeah, man. So it's like I got a lot of stuff, right? So I got my eye on a few ones. I got a Paul Reed Smith that's coming in a month.
I was going to ask if you had a PRS. Yeah.
So I want like a really nice 10-top Paul Reed Smith, but I actually ordered a John Mayer has a signature edition that's really interesting. And
don't say that man's name.
You don't like John Mayer?
I don't like John Mayer.
he made a mean guitar, man. So,
All right.
and yeah, probably a 2019 bucket list will be get a really nice, highly figured Paul Reed Smith, super nice one. But
Cool.
I have to spend $6,000 to get the one I want, and so I'm just like I'm delaying that purchase for a little while. So
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, dude, this is
hanging on. Listen to the very end. Listen to guitars.
Well, thank you for doing this, and thanks for everybody who joined in.
Yeah.
We'll do another one really soon, and we'll do one about tooling soon. We'll get Jessica on here too. So, Mike, thanks a lot.
Cool.
And Jessica Mandel, thank you very much. Folks, have a good night.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.